Tokyo, Japan. My name is Gary Verheller, and I'll be your host for what we call the Substance of Living podcast. Today, we'll look at what we call life's lessons. And I hope this will provide you with some insight, maybe even some inspiration to life's challenges. And welcome to episode 21, Military Experience, part 2. This is going to be involved with facing fear. If you've listened to some of my previous podcasts, you'll know that there's a way you can take uncontrollable fear and move it into controllable fear. Uncontrollable fear has many unknowns. So the target is reduce the number of unknowns, which makes it a much more controllable fear. I knew that only over the last maybe 15 years or so. When I was in the Navy in 1969, 1970, some of my friends in the military school where I was going, which was for avionics, some of my classmates said, hey, let's go learn how to skydive. I've always had a fear of heights. A fascination as well. When you're at a high place, you look down, you think, oh my God, what happens if I fall? But also I would love to be able to fly. So it was a mixed bag. And I thought, yeah, I should face this fear because I really love airplanes. I love flying. Maybe I should face this fear by learning how to skydive. What I did was I decided to go as a young man and face my fear. And the electronics school was located in Millington, Tennessee. So we went to a very small town called Cockrum, Mississippi, just south of Memphis, south of Millington, Tennessee. And there we learned at the school how to do a parachute roll. At this time, this was before parachutes were flyable. The parachute you probably see more often than not now looks almost like a wing, and you can fly it. You can actually back up with those. But this was back in 1969. So at that time, that was where the parachutes were conical, and you had very limited control. The most advanced parachute at that time was called a Paracommander. And that was notoriously difficult to pack properly, and it was a challenge. You had to be very careful with it. I had one of the very simple conical shaped parachutes. So when you landed, you didn't have a whole lot of ability to slow down or to direct where you want to go very, very well. So we learned how to parachute roll. And then on my very first jump, my mom and dad were there. They were visiting, and they wanted to see me do my first jump. And both my mom and dad were holding on to each other. And what we would do is we were going out of a one-engine plane, and each one of the parachutists were from the back all the way to the front, sitting down on the floor with their legs open, and the next person. I volunteered to be first. Why? Because I was so scared. I was afraid of losing it if I had to wait and watch everybody else go. I thought, I'll get it over with. So what we would do is we were instructed to stand on the wheel of this small little one-engine plane, reach out to the wing strut and hold on to the wing strut, and then look back at the dive master, at the jump master, and he would say, go, and we would let go, and we'd fall away. Now this was called a hop and pop, or a static line jump, in which the parachute was connected by a line to the aircraft so it would automatically open. Well, so I got out there, but when I reached out to the strut, I held onto the strut, and I stepped on the wheel was not locked, and it just spun. And I went, oh my God, holding on literally for dear life. And I looked over, and the guy said, go. And I looked at him again, he said, go. So I just, and there's a parachute count: 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010 to open your emergency parachute, which was on your chest. So when I jumped out, I didn't say 1001. I said, oh my God, 1. Oh my God, 2. Eyes closed. I had no idea what was happening. And the parachute opened. Wonderful. Now, when I was coming down this very first time, there was a tree, and I just couldn't seem to avoid the tree. I tried to turn, and to turn, more air would come out of this side of the canopy and it would push me this way. Or if I wanted to go this way, more air would come out of this side, this one would close, and I would turn this way. And I just couldn't seem to avoid this tree. I ended up landing about 10 yards from the tree, but I was safe. And that was my first time to jump. Then after I left electronics school, I went into NAS Oceana, Naval Air Station Oceana. Now, Virginia has many, many military bases. And in particular, right in this area, the Navy had NAS Oceana, Little Creek, Dam Neck, Norfolk, which is not only the port, but also NAS Norfolk too. There was a Naval Air Station there too. So there are many, 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 many sailors in that area. At Little Creek Amphibious Base, that's where the SEALs trained. And the SEALs wanted to skydive at a closed parachute jumping club that was located on my base, NAS Oceana. In order for them to open the club, they had to open it to all naval personnel. So the SEALs taught me how to skydive as well. And the very last jump I had, it was my first free fall. And it was from a helicopter. I do not like helicopters because helicopters fall out of the sky. Even today's helicopters fall out of the sky. So I was in the helicopter, and I had a jump master I did not know. That was the difficult thing about the SEALs. They just wanted to skydive. They didn't really want to deal with students so much. For some reason, they took me under their wing and they liked me, even though my hair was down to here at that time, 1969, 1970, and I drove an orange VW bus with a peace emblem on it. But they said, Beerhuller, you're okay. And I'm okay, because the SEALs are seriously dangerous people. So I got into the helicopter, we went out, I jumped. Now I had my own parachute at this time, and it was a very, very tight pack. Let me explain how a parachute pack at that time operated. You had two flaps. Each flap had 3 bungee straps so that it would pull open. And the parachute ripcord was a stainless steel cord that had pins, stationary pins. So when you pulled, all 3 pins would come out at the same time. So the flaps are being pulled, and when the ripcord is being pulled out. Inside the pack, there is what was called a pilot chute. And the pilot chute was a very small parachute that was spring-loaded. So now that spring-loaded pilot chute is pushing out of the pack. So you've got those devices working for you, pulling it out, pushing out, and connected to the pilot chute is the bag, the canopy bag. Connected to the bottom of the canopy bag in a figure-8 design, not crossing, but like switchback trails on a mountain, are the lines. The lines are connected to my harness, my full-body harness. When I went out, 1001, 1002, I was so scared, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, and I couldn't open my parachute. The ripcord was stuck. And I started pulling like crazy. I didn't care about anything. My only focus was trying to get the ripcord out of the housing so my parachute would open. And I was tumbling in the air. I didn't realize it. Well, I was tumbling in the air, and finally I pulled, and I literally thought, I am going to die. This is a time that I'm going to die. This is how I'm going to die. And I got so angry. I said, not today. And I pulled the ripcord completely out of its housing and threw it away. Well, the pack opened. The pilot chute came out. A pilot chute came between my legs, which means the canopy bag came between my legs, which means the lines came between my legs, which means my shoulders, boom, were coming between my legs, and it knocked me out. And I was knocked out, and I woke up, and I looked up, and my lines were twisted all the way up to just this little puff of a canopy. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to have to cut away and use my emergency chute? Well, let me see if I can work with this. So I tried to move my body. I was moving my body to untwist my lines, and it spun me so hard it knocked me out a second time. And when I finally woke up, I could see the target area, and strangely enough, there was a skeet shooting range right next to the target area with skeet shooting houses that were throwing the skeets up. And I was coming down, it looked like I was going to hit right into one of those houses. And there was a drainage ditch, and then there was the target over here. So I was doing my best to control, and I had no idea. By this time, I was just delirious. And people said on the ground, they could hear me say, "Oh no, oh no." I was screaming to the top of my lungs. I landed smack face first into that drainage ditch. And the SEALs came running over and turned me over. And I threw up, and I looked at them and I said, "I don't think I'm going to jump anymore today." Off to the hospital for a 24-hour concussion observation. That was my last jump. But what I learned that in a critical, life-endangering situation, I could respond. I could think and I could respond. I still want to go parachuting. I still want to learn how to skydive. And that's one of the things I have on my list to do before I die. I will skydive, I will free fall on my own. I'm 71, yet I still want to do that. So that's my military experience part 2. Thank you. Bye. Thank you for joining us today for the Substance of Living podcast. If you'd be kind enough to consider subscribing, you can contact us through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or connect on Twitter. Join us again next time for what I hope will help you navigate life.